I think we are live. Jeff, appreciate you taking the time to chat a little bit with me.
No problem.
And as promised in my last YouTube video, I wanted to put out just a short podcast with someone in my course that not only is in the course but has the lifetime access with with the mentorship as well. Um, and Jeff, I don't want to speak for you, but just to give a brief introduction of you, you're in Parker, Colorado, right outside of Denver. Um, and I should have looked earlier, but I think it was early in the year that you initially signed up for High Ticket Masterclass, and that's when you first reached out over email and introduced yourself. And then I think it wasn't until several months later that you ended up signing up for the lifetime with the mentorship calls. And
Mhm.
then we actually just over the last month or two have had the chance to chat a little bit over the phone. So um, I guess if you wouldn't mind, maybe just briefly introduce yourself, give your background, and maybe talk a little bit about like what led you to entrepreneurship, more specifically high ticket drop shipping.
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Jeff. I'm 46, and I've actually kind of been working in IT for the last 7 years. Before that, I was actually a police officer and did work for a major airline out there, and didn't really have any kind of background in any type of sales or really anything like that before. So, what kind of led me into doing this, though, was I just wanted to do something on my own. I know there was a lot more money to be made than working for a company, and this seemed kind of like a good fit. The one thing that I kind of leaned in toward drop and shipping was I really liked the fact that I didn't have to have a physical store. I didn't have to have that huge investment. It really kind of seemed to fit with what I was kind of looking for. So the only problem with the regular drop shipping that I kind of looked at was I didn't want to have 100 orders a day that I was having to deal with, 30% of those people calling me and having to deal with that. Well, at the same time, I planned on keeping my day job. So I wasn't really sure how that kind of fit in. And when I came across the high ticket drop shipping, I was like, well, I'm not going to have 100 orders a day. I'd probably have two or three. And that really became very appealing for me. I was like, all right, that's something I really was kind of interested in. So
For sure. And I guess that leads me to my next question. Just as you're exploring different routes to get into it, eventually you had to have stumbled upon me and my course at some point. So I'm just curious how you came upon it, what led you to it, and so far just what your experience has been uh, working through it.
yeah, so I was researching the drop shipping, and I actually came across your course, and you talked about basically the same thing I just mentioned. You're dealing with one or two people where you might be making $1,000, $2,000 off of one product instead of selling 100, 200 products to make that same amount. And that, yeah, that drop shipping in that way really made more sense. So I ended up signing up for the smaller version of your course and kind of getting into it that way. So, and then once I started researching a little bit more, that's kind of when everything kind of became apparent. I was like, this is something I really need to get on.
Yeah, a viable option, and
Yeah.
sorry to be redundant. Was it YouTube where you came across
It was
my
initially
content?
YouTube, yeah,
Okay,
and then I started seeing some TikTok videos and stuff coming across as well. So
the algorithms all tend to work
it's
together.
it's
It's
everywhere.
it's
It's
amazing.
everywhere.
Okay, so you got the course. You started, exploring all the things that one explores with high ticket drop shipping. The business entity, but more importantly, figuring out what niche makes the most sense. And we were kind of talking before we started recording here. There was a niche or two that you had discussed prior to the one that you have now. And just to level set with everyone watching this, we are not going to specifically discuss your product or your niche. Niche is a very sacred thing amongst the high ticket drop shipping community,
Mhm.
and the e-commerce community in general. So just to level set there, but maybe talk about the ones you looked at prior, what like worked about them, what didn't work, and why you chose something else.
So initially, I kind of I had had some house flipping experience in the past, so I kind of was like, well, maybe I should kind of look at something like that. So, being that I kind of live in the west side of the country, one of the big things is like copper tubs, like the Southwest kind of Art Deco, kind of remodel stuff. So I looked into copper tubs, and they had a good price margin. Everything was right. The shipping was a little high, but it was doable. So I actually set up a website, started getting products. I actually had a manufacturer in Mexico that had the ability to get across the border with a lot of the stuff. So that actually worked. And then I found some distributors in Florida and got permission from them, started putting all their stuff on the website. And it seemed like things were ready to go, but I ended up getting a call from one of the distributors in Florida, and she's like, "I see all your stuff on my website." And I said, "Yeah, I've got the email here that said I was good to go." And she went off on me, like started yelling and screaming. And I mean, it was not a very business appropriate conversation that she had, but she basically threatened me with all kinds of legal action and stuff. And I took all the stuff off the website, and then I started finding other distributors. And of course, you could find all the products with it, the sinks and the faucets. And, so I had all this stuff kind of planned out, and it just didn't really work. There wasn't enough kind of people to give me a really good supply of products on my website. So unfortunately, I kind of was like, all right, I'm going to back off of that. I had some life events that kind of happened, and I had to take a little bit of a break. And when I got back into it, I started looking at like golf simulators, and I was like, well, let's just kind of check this out. So I quickly reworked the website and just made it into like a golf simulator, to kind of show people, hey, this is what it would look like. And I went out and found some people, but the market just was not there for it. Plus, the golf simulators, they wanted people to have just their golf simulators. They didn't want anyone else's on there. So if you had a competitor,
Mm,
they just did not like that at all. And that's fine. That's their products. They have that ability to make that choice. But so I started to kind of look for the next niche, and I actually like started looking at like lights on billboards. Like the big lights that are up there that shine at night. And I did that, kind of researched that a little bit. I did went back to like wooden tubs and everything to see if there was a market for that. And then I was driving down the road, and I found the niche I'm in now. And it literally was just something that popped out, and I was like, I wonder if that would work. And once you started researching it, it literally exploded. I was like, oh my God, this is it.
for
And
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and I remember you emailing me saying you found the niche. You think you
I,
found the niche, and
yeah.
and again, leaving it as vague as possible. In contrast to the first couple that you considered, the tubs, the golf simulators, this is very much need based, about as
Hmm.
need based as it gets.
Yeah.
Um, and not only that, but the margins are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so maybe before we get too ahead of ourselves as far as sales and margins and profit goes, I guess maybe talk about the process of getting new suppliers for this and the different factors you considered. What's the supplier pool like for this, and um, are you working directly with manufacturers, or is it more of a distributor base?
So initially, I didn't want to go through the whole process of trying to find like all the distributors, because with the niche I'm in, there are everything within that niche is very expensive, and there are just multiple suppliers. So I wanted to try to get into this quickly and see if there was a market for this. So I ended up finding a distributor, and the margins were not as high as they are going with directly with the manufacturers, but I just had to go to this one person, get in, start advertising, and seeing if there was a market. And then if there was a market, then I could go to those individual
Kind of
manufacturers
like
and
a
kind of set
one-stop
up accounts
shop.
with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So initially my margins were 15%, anywhere from 12 to 15%, which on a very $10,000 piece of equipment, it's still good, but it wasn't as high as it could have been. So, but I made a couple sales, and I was like, there is definitely a market for this, and that's
Proof
when
of
I started
concept.
getting with the manufacturers, and the manufacturers were 25, 30% discounts on all their stuff. So, and that
That
makes the
makes a
$10,000
pretty
sale
big
much more,
difference.
much
Yeah,
more lucrative. So,
yeah. And so the summer's flown by, so the months are kind of blending together for me.
yeah.
So I think it was maybe mid to late June when you and I first spoke, when you reached out and you're like, hey, I think I'm just going to buy the lifetime mentorship so we can actually chat about this
Hmm.
and bounce some ideas off.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess before we get to the sales that you've made, what changes as far as the website do you feel like have been the most impactful? Um, maybe things that we've done within your Google Ads account. What have been the most notable differences and things that you've changed with your current website?
So the basic layout on the website, the pursuit theme that you had kind of mentioned really works well. So that was kind of nice having like that was a great template to kind of start off of and start working from. So that was great. The one thing I did was I had never really set up a website before. So my initial website design was very basic. It was very I tried to choose colors that kind of went with what my niche, and um, what I kind of found from feedback from people was, it didn't really look like a real website. So I had to go back in and just redid a bunch of stuff, redid my logo, and I made it's not a really flashy website, but it's more, people are like, hey, this is focused to what I'm looking at and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then from there, going into like Google Ads, like I can't tell you how much Google Ads is like the single biggest thing you will make money from, and how, going into AdWords and keywords on your searches, and getting all that stuff, trying to, honed in to where you have just a very consistent customer base that you're pinging off of, and going from there. It's very, that is the ultimate thing you have to get down. So,
Yep. And it's easier said than done for sure.
yeah, it really is. There's a lot to it.
Because you definitely need, in today's day and age of competitive e-commerce, you need somewhat of a decent budget to do it. But at the end of the day, there are two things you're trying to accomplish. It's A, you want to show up for the correct keywords. B, you want to show up as high on the page as possible for those correct keywords. And if you can get that correct, you're in a good spot. But I want to go back to something that you mentioned with the change that you made to your website, just the overall look of it, because this is something that I encountered with my website too, back a couple of years ago now. Um, it I feel like there's a big tendency today to want to make just a really fancy, modern, flashy looking website, but
Mm,
that might work for a fancy apparel brand.
yeah.
Um, but when you're selling very functional, uh, not sexy products, um, no one gives a damn about that. It's, does this look trustworthy?
Hmm.
Does the does this look like a reliable source for the product that I'm trying to buy?
Yeah.
And that's something that I'll talk to people about until I'm blue in the face. It makes such a massive difference in the competitive landscape of things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it really does. Like I didn't have like of course, we've got the rotating products on the collection page and stuff down below, but I didn't have like graphics flashing or anything like that. And kind of going into some of my customers, like initially when I got into my niche, I was looking at, like I'm going to sell to people, doing this. And what I found was I was having a lot of government and county and state, um, you know, people contacting me. So they didn't really want like a flashy, they just wanted to be able to get their products and talk to somebody, and be able to quickly, get their stuff to them as fast as possible. So
yep,
not having the flashy website kind of worked out for my favor.
for sure. And so that actually led me to my next thing before we get into your sales is just the customer demographic that you're working with. So, like you mentioned, it's almost entirely government from what it sounds like, unless there's some contractor that
Yeah.
purchases on a government's behalf. And so, just for everyone listening, if these types of niches are few and far between. They're kind of like diamonds in the rough. Um, if you can end up in a niche or a space where it's consistently other businesses or in this case government agencies that are buying on a need base, that's something that doesn't really go away during the year. They're much larger budgets, and it's not like and maybe this leads me to a question: is have you run into a situation yet where you have to submit a quote and it's because it's a government agency, they have to compare three of them and then go with the best bidder?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So initially, when I started advertising right off the back, I ended up getting a procurement company, and they contacted me and they're like, "Hey, we want to buy 5 of these items," and it was like a $40,000 order, almost a $40,000 order with the shipping and
Good
everything.
grief.
And I was like, okay, and of course I gave them like a really significant break on the price down to, I think it was about 34, 35,000. And I still was going to make, a good chunk of change. And it was nothing off my back because I'm just placing the order and then the manufacturer is shipping it out. So, I mean, if I'm making
As long as you're in the
5,000
green.
instead of 10,000, whatever, I'm still making really good money. But they were like, yeah, hey, we're going to go with you. And unfortunately, that order kind of fell through. I don't know exactly what happened, but that is what it is, But I do get I get orders for 10,000. That's not a big deal from people. So, but yeah, it's definitely a lot of, I would say 80% of my customers are government. And it's one of those things I didn't expect that at all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
It's
cool.
often never by design.
No.
I always tell people just lean into what is working.
Hmm.
And in this situation, it is selling to government agencies.
Yep.
Um, so let's get down to it. If you would, maybe break down your sales so far. Have they all been more or less the same product type, same brand? What have the average order sizes been? And you have already kind of talked about the margins, but it seems like since we started talking in late June to where things are at now, things have accelerated pretty considerably. So
Yeah. Yeah. So my very first order was for $77. And I was like, all right. But initially, like right after that, I ended up getting like a $5,000 order. And I ended up getting basically 5 orders, and it was a total of $26,000 that first month, which was, for 5 orders, that's great.
that's excellent.
On average, I get 3 calls a day, and it's people, just asking, hey, can you give me a better price on this, or whatever, and that's great. Right after the end of this month, on the very first day, I woke up at 6 a.m. to my phone going ka-ching, which is an amazing alarm sound. But
The
it was
best one there is.
yeah, it was $9,700 order. So that's a great way to start a Monday, and also kind of a nice little alarm clock. So
A momentum setter for the
yeah,
remainder of the week.
yeah.
Um,
So and
so
it's been all different types of products. So I initially kind of started off with one, and then once I got into the manufacturers, I just expanded out my product lines. So now I'm starting to advertise and sell those, and I've still got another 4 more products that I have to add into my website and get those out advertising as well. So
product types, that is.
yeah,
Yeah.
so um, without going into my niche too much, basically, yeah, I looked initially like right here at this one product. And then I kind of expanded and said, okay, well, wait, let's get different product lines of that same thing. And then I was like, all right, well, all these different products here go with that, and they're all really expensive as well. And it just really, I mean, things just kind of blossomed. I mean, I get probably 200 people a day on my website. So looking at these products, which I didn't really
Is
think there would
that
be that much demand.
Is that only paid traffic, or are you getting some like free Google listings traffic
No,
too?
free Google listings, all kinds of stuff. And amazingly, I don't know how the initial order that I had for $76, I wasn't even advertising at that time. So I don't
Yeah,
know how he really found me, but
it's
he,
something that I scratch my head about to this day. I don't know how some of these people land on the most random pages of your
yeah,
website, but they do.
yeah,
And it's like that's about as good of a deal as you can get because you didn't actually pay for that customer to land on your website.
exactly.
Um, that's awesome. So so you said you're getting about 2 to 3 calls a day right now, and you're
Hmm.
also working a full time job.
Yep.
Well, Monday through Thursday, but
Yeah.
it might as well be a full time job.
Yeah.
How are you balancing customer service? What does it look like your process right now getting back to these customers? Because I know the vast majority of people that take this course that look to get into e-commerce in general already have a job. And
Yeah.
so that's the number one question they have. How do I do this while I have a full-time job?
So basically, I mean, I get the breaks, I get the lunch every day. So I had to kind of rearrange my work schedule to where if I was getting a call from somebody, I set up my phone to say, "Hey, you reached Jeff from so and so. We're on with another customer right now. Please leave us a message. We'll call you right back." And then I will call them on my break. I will call them on my lunch. If I have to call a manufacturer on some kind of question. I do that, during my lunchtime. I go hungry, but I don't care. It is what it is. I'd rather make a sale than grab a sandwich.
Agreed.
And then yeah, it as far as like when I come home, because my normal work schedule was 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So I would come home and basically place the orders when I get home for whatever I have and also add in new product. And I don't really care. For me, like I will get 5 or 6 hours of sleep. That's just the way I am. So I will be up till 2 in the morning putting in new products and then, having that stuff ready to go, for the next day. So
For sure.
that's, it gets busy, but, it doesn't, with 2 or 3 calls a day, it's not that bad, you know?
No, and like you said, in contrast to selling, a $30 item, you
Yeah.
don't have to respond to 50 different people. It's much more manageable and but also much more worth your time,
Yeah.
uh, given the margins that you're getting.
Yeah.
Real quick on the margins, you had mentioned to me before the call that you are actually charging shipping on pretty much almost all products,
Hmm.
and that's very interesting because I've always told the people in my course, just because it's the way that I've always learned it and done it,
Hmm.
you have to offer free shipping on everything in order to compete. Well, clearly this is proving that sentiment wrong, or at least it's probably very niche dependent,
Yeah.
and customer dependent.
And that was one of my initial red flags when that's why I kind of went with the distributor in the beginning to kind of see, does this work? Because of that shipping. And what I found was when I started talking to people, they're like, yeah, just let me know the shipping cost on that. And I was like, all right. And I mean, some of the stuff that I ship is $1,000,
Yeah,
$185. I mean, it really is up there quite a ways. And some of the
eats
stuff
into the
is very
margins.
large that we're selling. So paying those shipping costs, people kind of expected it. And I was like, all right, well, this works really well for this niche. So I'm
Yeah,
going to do
yeah.
it. So
Don't change it if there's zero reason to change it, because another thing I always tell people is that the most important factor, aside from Google Ads, aside from your website, is the margins that you're getting on your products.
mhm,
Because realistically, you can only make your conversion rate so high with high ticket drop shipping. A 1% conversion rate is about as excellent as it gets. And so the
mhm,
closer you can get to that, the better. And if you're trying to get to that and you're bidding somewhat high on products, um, it's only going to make sense if you get good margins on your products too. Um,
yeah,
so
I would totally agree with that. Totally.
for
So
sure.
it's,
Just a couple more questions for you.
mhm.
I guess what value have you taken from our mentorship calls so far versus just the course itself? Um, And in general, maybe what are some of the things that you would have done differently off the bat looking back?
Um, so the value of it is this, is that I didn't have any knowledge on any of this stuff. Um, like setting up the website and, logos. I mean, that's stuff that I've never done. I've worked a job for as long as I can remember. So having someone that has done this, that's set up Google Ads, that can tell you exactly how to do the Google trackers, how to go in there and look at your account and say, okay, here's where we need to tweak this, and then watching after 4 or 5 days the results of what happens from that was actually really beneficial. It saved me a lot of money, as far as like I would have spent thousands of dollars with Google Ads, going into that and trying to figure that out before you realized, oh, I need to do this to get that to work, versus here it is, we're done. This needs to be fixed. Let's do it. So that was really beneficial. And then, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good answer. My last question for you is just going forward. What's your kind of, what do you see in the next coming months with your store? What do you plan to do to improve it? What do you plan to do to scale it?
So basically, I'm going to add a bunch of products into it. Because as you had kind of mentioned when you saw what I was doing, it's very honed down. Like you can't get any more focused than where I'm at with this. So I'm going to add in as many products as I can, and then I'm going to basically just really kind of scale up the advertising to really start getting out there, and I'm doing this. I did 26,000 the first month, and I really think that doing 5 times, even 6, 7 times that is realistic. And in addition to that, I mean, realistically, you could spend 3 or 4 hours a week on this once you have everything set up and everything's good to go. Between taking phone calls and placing orders and stuff like that, it's about 3 or 4 hours, which is kind of great. So I'm kind of looking at other stores now, other ideas I've had, which I'm kind of just researching a little bit, but just need to focus on my store right now that I have and get that situated before I go that route. So, but I think scaling it as far as like having the sales coming in, getting the budget up, increasing the AdWords campaigns and going from there is where I really need to be. So
For sure.
yeah.
Awesome. I think that's about all of the questions that I had, and we'll obviously talk more on our separate calls. But it's awesome to hear just where things are at. After a several month process, and I think there are many things to be taken away from this. One of them is finding a really solid niche.
Yeah.
Anyone that says the niche isn't as that important, it is not correct.
Yeah.
It becomes more important with time.
Yeah.
And also not feeling the need to make a fancy, flashy website, make it objective, make it straightforward, and give people the information that they need to find within 30 seconds of landing on it.
Yeah.
So again, very encouraging to hear just how things are going for you, and excited to see how things go over the next coming months and to a year. So
I'm excited. I'm going to be taking a vacation in October, so it's kind of nice to be like, hey, I've got a lot of cash in the bank to kind of go do that with now. So
no, absolutely,
good
absolutely.
feeling.
Well, Jeff, again, appreciate you taking the time to do this. You're going to be famous on YouTube now, so I hope you're ready for that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
But yeah, all right, I'll stop recording here.